My name is Harper Sullivan, and am 28 years old. The text came while I was sitting in the hospital cafeteria, watching my grandmother slip away on the fourth floor. Harper, I've had enough of your disrespect and accusations. You are no longer my daughter. All communication goes through my attorney, Gerald Whitmore. Do not contact me, Celeste, or your brother. You're cut off. My best friend Jenna watched me read it, expecting tears. Instead, I laughed. A bitter, cold laugh. Because 3 days earlier, I'd found the bank statements hidden in Grandma's closet. $85,000. Gone. He had no idea I already knew everything. I typed back one word. Okay. Then I started making calls. Before we dive into this story, drop a comment and let me know where you're watching from. If you've ever dealt with family betrayal or financial manipulation, hit that like button so I know I'm not alone. And please subscribe, because this story gets wild, and you'll want to see how justice actually works when you refuse to stay silent. Trust me, what happened next will shock you. Now, let's get into how my father tried to destroy me and how I made sure the truth came out. Growing up in the suburbs of Portland, Oregon, I thought I had a normal family. My father, Richard Sullivan, was 56 years old and worked as a real estate investor. My mother died when I was 16, leaving behind me and my younger brother Tyler, who was 25 now and supposedly finding himself in Europe on Dad's endless funding. After Mom passed, I became the responsible one. I put myself through nursing school while working double shifts at a diner, paying every cent of my tuition and living expenses. Meanwhile, Tyler got a full ride from Dad, not for college expenses, just because. Monthly allowances, new car, apartment deposit, you name it. When I asked Dad once, just once, if he could help with my student loans, I got a lecture about self-reliance and building character. Tyler got Venmo transfers every Friday like clockwork. The shift really started when Dad remarried. Within 18 months of Mom's death, he met Celeste at a grief counseling group. She was 48, a yoga instructor with a serene smile and a daughter named Brooke from her previous marriage. Brooke was 21, and from the moment Celeste moved into our family home, Dad became obsessed with his new instant family. He paid for Brooke's apartment, her car, her tuition at an expensive private college downtown. I watched it happen in real time. Suddenly, family dinners didn't include me unless it was a holiday. Dad's Facebook was full of photos with Celeste and Brooke at wine tastings and weekend trips to the coast. Tyler appeared occasionally. I was virtually invisible. When I mentioned it once, Dad said I was being dramatic. He said Celeste and Brooke needed more support because they'd been through so much. Apparently, my mother's death and my struggles didn't count. My grandmother Dorothy was my mom's mother, and she was the only stable presence I had after Mom died. She was 82 years old, sharp as a tack, and lived independently in the house my grandfather built in the 1970s. She was my refuge. Every Sunday, I'd visit her for tea and stories about Mom's childhood. She never remarried after Grandpa died, and she was fiercely proud of her independence. 6 months before that text message, Dorothy was diagnosed with stage 4 pancreatic cancer. The doctors gave her maybe a year. I immediately became her primary caretaker, coordinating medications, driving her to appointments, staying overnight when the pain got bad. I was working night shifts at the hospital and spending my days with her. Dad visited twice in those 6 months. Both times, he stayed less than 20 minutes, took a selfie with her for Facebook, and left. Tyler never came at all. 2 weeks before the disowning text, Grandma asked me to check something. Her voice was weak, but her mind was clear. Harper, something's wrong with my accounts. Your father has power of attorney for my medical decisions, but I'm seeing withdrawals I don't recognize. Can you look into it? She gave me written permission to request her bank records. I'm a nurse, not a financial investigator, but even I could see the pattern immediately. Systematic withdrawals over 18 months. Small enough to avoid triggering fraud alerts, but steady. 10,000 here, 5,000 there, sometimes 20,000 in a month. The money was transferred to an account under Richard Sullivan's business name, then dispersed to various places. The total was $85,000. I felt sick. I printed everything, highlighted the transactions, and made copies. 3 days before that text arrived, I went to Dad's office downtown. He worked out of a small commercial building he co-owned, all glass and modern furniture that screamed success but whispered debt. I walked in without an appointment, laid the bank statements on his desk, and asked him to explain. He didn't even look surprised. He glanced at the papers, leaned back in his leather chair, and said, "Your grandmother is confused, Harper. Her medication makes her paranoid. This is adult business, and you need to stay out of it." I told him those were real transactions from real accounts. He stood up, walked to the door, and opened it. "I think you should leave. You're upset, and you're not thinking clearly." I left, but I knew what I was dealing with. He wasn't denying it. He was dismissing me. There's a difference. I went home and started organizing evidence, planning to bring it up at a family dinner scheduled for the following week. I never got the chance. The text came first. The timestamp on the text was 11:47 on a Tuesday morning. I was sitting in the hospital cafeteria with Jenna, who'd taken her lunch break to sit with me while Grandma slept upstairs. Jenna saw my face change when I read it and immediately grabbed my phone. She read it out loud, her voice rising with each word. "He disowned you?" Over text message, other people in the cafeteria were starting to stare, but I didn't care. I felt this strange calm wash over me. It was like everything suddenly made sense. The timing, the wording, the finality. This wasn't a spontaneous decision. This was planned. Jenna kept asking if I was okay, but I was already 3 steps ahead. I pulled up my contacts and called Madison Price, a friend from college who'd gone to law school and now practiced family law. I explained everything in under 5 minutes. Madison didn't hesitate. "Don't engage with him. Document everything. I'm filing a report with Adult Protective Services today." While I was still on the phone with Madison, my phone started blowing up. First, my brother Tyler texted, "Sis, you went too far this time. Dad's really hurt. Maybe you should apologize." I didn't respond. Then the family group chat, which included Dad's sister Linda and a few cousins, started lighting up. Aunt Linda asked what was happening. Dad sent a long message to everyone. "I'm heartbroken to share that Harper has been struggling with some mental health issues we've been managing privately. She's made serious and false accusations against me that have forced us to take legal action to protect our family. Celeste and I are devastated, but we have to think of Brooke and Tyler. Please respect our privacy during this difficult time." I screenshotted everything. Then I noticed Celeste had posted something on Instagram that morning. It was a photo of her and Brooke having brunch, with a caption about toxic people and setting boundaries. Brooke had shared it to her story with the addition, "Some people are so ungrateful they bite the hand that feeds them." Within 4 hours of making the call, Adult Protective Services assigned a case investigator. Her name was Ruth Chen, and she called me that same afternoon. She asked me to email her everything I had: bank statements, text messages, medical records, power of attorney documents, everything. I sent it all from the hospital library computer lab. Ruth called me back 30 minutes later. "Miss Sullivan, I've been doing this work for 12 years. What you've documented here is one of the most clear-cut cases of financial exploitation I've seen. I'm opening a formal investigation today. Your father will be contacted within 48 hours. I felt something loosen in my chest. Validation. Somebody believed me. Ruth warned me that things would probably get worse before they got better. Family members who exploit elders often escalate when they're caught. Be prepared." That evening, Grandma had a brief lucid moment. The hospice nurse called me back up to her room. Dorothy's eyes were open, focused. I sat beside her bed and held her hand. "Grandma, I found the money. I know what he did. I'm fixing it." Her grip tightened on my fingers, stronger than I expected. "Your mother would be so proud of you, sweetheart. Don't let him win. Promise me you won't let him win." I promised. She smiled, closed her eyes, and slipped back into unconsciousness. 3 days later, Dorothy passed away peacefully in her sleep. I was holding her hand when it happened. The nurse noted the time of death as 3:22 in the morning on Friday. I called Jenna first, then Madison, then I sent a group text to the family chat. Grandma Dorothy passed away this morning. Services to be announced. Dad's response came 10 minutes later. I'll handle the arrangements. My response was immediate. No, you won't. I'm the executor of her will. I'll let everyone know details by tomorrow. Dorothy's will had been updated 2 years earlier, long before her cancer diagnosis. Shed named me as executor, and the document was rock solid. When Dad found out, he called me directly, ignoring his own rule about going through his lawyer. Harper, as her son-in-law and the person who managed her finances, I should be handling the funeral arrangements. You're too emotional and you're clearly not stable right now. I was standing in Grandma's kitchen, surrounded by her things, and I'd never felt more stable in my life. The will is legal and filed with the county. I'm the executor. You can attend the funeral or not. That's your choice. He hung up on me. I planned the service at Grandma's church, a small Presbyterian congregation where she'd been a member for 40 years. Dad had suggested we use an expensive funeral home across town with a big reception hall. I knew why. He wanted control of the narrative, control of who spoke, control of the whole day. I wasn't giving him that. The viewing was on Wednesday evening. I arrived early with Jenna and my cousin Marcus, who'd driven up from Eugene. Marcus worked at a bank, different from the one Dad used, and had quietly told me he believed me after seeing the documents I'd shared with Aunt Linda. When Dad arrived with Celeste, Brooke, and Tyler, they moved as a united front. They walked straight to the front row, the one typically reserved for immediate family, and sat down in a line. Physically, they blocked the space where I would normally sit. It was deliberate. I watched Celeste whisper to guests as they arrived, her hand on their arms, her face arranged in sympathetic concern. I couldn't hear what she was saying, but I saw people glance at me with confusion or pity. Later, someone told me she'd been saying, "Poor Richard. His daughter's breakdown has been so difficult for him during this loss." I sat in the third row with Jenna and Marcus. I didn't make a scene. I was there for Grandma, not for them. Brooke spent the entire viewing taking selfies. She posted them to Instagram in real time. Photos of herself looking sad next to Grandma's casket, photos of her hugging Celeste, photos of the flower arrangements. The captions made it sound like she and Dorothy had been close. "Rest in peace, Grandma Dorothy. You were such a light in our lives." They'd met exactly twice. Both times were at Thanksgiving dinners years ago, and Dorothy had later told me she found Brooke self-absorbed. The comments on Brooke's posts were full of support from her friends. "Your family is so strong through this betrayal. Stay strong, babe." Toxic people always show themselves. I didn't comment. I didn't engage. I just took screenshots of everything. Madison had told me that documentation was my best weapon, so I documented everything. The will reading happened at my apartment on Friday afternoon. I chose the location deliberately. It was neutral ground, and I wanted witnesses. Dorothy's attorney, Mr. Brennan, was a kind man in his 70s, who'd known my grandmother for decades. He read the will in a steady, formal voice. Dorothy left her house, which was fully paid off and worth approximately $340,000, to me. She left her jewelry and personal items to me. She left $5,000 to Tyler for his travel fund, which even included a little joke because she knew Tyler loved to travel. And then Mr. Brennan read the part that made Dad's face turn purple. "I leave nothing to my son-in-law, Richard Sullivan. He has taken enough." The room went silent. Dad stood up so fast his chair fell over. "This will be contested. She wasn't of sound mind. She was on medication. This is elder manipulation." Mr. Brennan calmly responded that Dorothy had updated her will 2 years prior, long before any diagnosis, and that she'd been evaluated by 2 independent physicians who decertified her mental competency at the time of signing. Dad stormed out. Celeste followed. Tyler looked confused but left with them. Brooke took one last selfie in my apartment bathroom before leaving. The next day, I received a certified letter from Gerald Whitmore, Dad's attorney. It was a cease and desist letter demanding I stop defaming Richard's character and spreading false allegations to family members. It demanded I sign a quitclaim deed transferring Grandma's house to Dad, because Head invested significantly in property upkeep and maintenance over the years. It gave me 7 days to comply or face legal action for emotional distress. Madison read it and actually laughed. This is a joke. He has no case. But it tells us he's desperate. She drafted a response on my behalf. It was 1 sentence long. My client declines and looks forward to the discovery phase of any litigation you choose to pursue. We also filed a formal complaint with the Oregon State Bar against Gerald for threatening a baseless lawsuit, which is considered an ethical violation. I was done playing defense. That same week, Tyler called me crying. It was 11 at night, and I almost didn't answer. Harper, Dad says you're keeping my inheritance. He said Grandma wanted me to have more, but you manipulated her into changing the will. I put him on speaker so Jenna, who was staying with me that week, could hear. I asked Tyler what Dad had promised him. There was a long silence. Then Tyler admitted, Dad said he'd get the house, that I could sell it and use the money as startup capital for a business. He said it was always the plan. I felt something break inside me. Dad had been planning this for a long time. Had set Tyler up as an ally, made him think he was entitled to something that was never his. I told Tyler the truth. I told him about the $85,000, about the bank statements, about the Adult Protective Services investigation. Tyler didn't believe me at first, but his voice changed when I offered to send him the evidence. "I'll look at it," he said quietly. Then he hung up. Oregon is a one-party consent state for recording phone calls, and id recorded the entire conversation. It was more documentation. Madison sent a formal response to Gerald through proper legal channels, declining every demand and notifying him that id requested a status update on the APS investigation. Ruth Chen, the investigator, responded within 24 hours. Mr. Sullivan has been uncooperative and has refused to voluntarily provide bank records or documentation. We're pursuing subpoena power through the court. This is standard in cases where the accused party refuses to cooperate. The wheels were turning, slowly but surely. Dad's refusal to cooperate was actually helping my case. It made him look guilty, because innocent people don't refuse to provide evidence that would clear them. I felt the momentum shifting, but Ruth's warning echoed in my head. Things would get worse first. I just didn't know how much worse. Cousin Marcus called me on Sunday morning. "Harper, I need to tell you something, but you can't tell anyone where you got this information." Marcus worked at a regional bank, completely separate from the one Dad used, but he had access to industry databases and knew how to spot financial irregularities. Head asked me to send him copies of the statements I'd found, and Head spent his weekend reviewing them. "Your father created fake invoices for home care services for Dorothy. I found the trail. The invoices are from companies that either don't exist or have never provided services in Oregon. The money went to real accounts, though. Brooke's credit cards were paid off to the tune of $18,000. Celeste's Business LLC, that wellness retreat thing she's always posting about, received $32,000 in startup funding. Tyler's Europe trip expenses, which I tracked through the dates and amounts, total around $42,000. I felt sick, but also vindicated. Marcus offered to provide an expert affidavit for the APS investigation. He said He'd do it under his professional credentials as a banking analyst. I wanted to hug him through the phone. Then I got an unexpected message on Instagram. It was from Sienna, Tyler's girlfriend, who I'd only met twice at family gatherings. "Harper, I think you should know what they're saying about you in the family chat." She sent me screenshots. Celeste had created a separate group chat that included Dad, Tyler, Brooke, and a few of Dad's cousins I barely knew. The messages made my blood run cold. Celeste had written, "Once we get the restraining order, she can't contest anything. Gerald says we need documented evidence of threatening behavior." Brooke had responded, "I can say she threatened me at the funeral. I'll write it up tonight." Dad's message was the worst. "Do what you need to do." Harper made her choice. Sienna's next message explained everything. "Tyler doesn't know I'm sending you this." I grabbed his phone while he was in the shower. My own grandmother went through this exact thing with her son. I know what financial elder abuse looks like. I believe you. The next betrayal came from someone I never expected. Melissa had been my best friend in high school. She'd been a bridesmaid at my almost wedding 3 years ago, before my fiancé left me for someone else. We'd drifted apart, but we still followed each other on social media. On Tuesday, Melissa posted a vague Facebook status. Sometimes people show their true colors during hard times. Praying for the Sullivan family through this difficult season. I called her immediately. She answered on the first ring, and her voice was cold. Harper, I love you, but I saw the medical records. Your dad showed them to my mom at yoga class. You've been struggling with depression and anxiety. Maybe you misunderstood what happened with the money. Maybe you're not seeing things clearly. I asked her what medical records she was talking about. She got defensive. Your psychiatric evaluation from last year. It said you've been having paranoid episodes. I told her I'd never had a psychiatric evaluation. She went quiet, then said she had to go. When I called back 5 minutes later, I was blocked. Jenna took a full week off work to help me organize everything. We spread documents across my living room floor like we were planning a heist. Bank statements in one pile, text messages printed out in another, medical records proving I'd never been psychiatrically evaluated in a third. We created a timeline on poster board, the kind you'd see in a crime show. Every withdrawal from Grandma's account was matched to a corresponding expense. Brooke's tuition payment dates matched perfectly with transfer dates. Celeste's business LLC was filed with the state on the exact same day a $20,000 withdrawal showed up. Tyler's Venmo transactions from Dad, which Sienna had also secretly screenshotted and sent me, lined up with ATM withdrawals in Europe. Jenna's boyfriend, who was in his second year of law school, came over and helped us format everything for legal submission. He kept saying, "This is textbook elder exploitation. Any jury would convict on this evidence." Then my work life exploded. I received an email from my nursing supervisor on Thursday morning. Harper, we need to schedule a meeting to discuss a complaint that was filed against you. Please contact HR immediately. My heart sank. I called HR and spoke to a woman named Patricia who'd always been kind to me. She sounded uncomfortable. Harper, we received an anonymous complaint alleging that you discussed patient information inappropriately and that you appeared unstable at work. We're required to investigate all complaints. I need you to come in tomorrow for a formal interview. I asked for specifics about the complaint. Patricia hesitated, then said, "The complaint stated you were seen crying at the nurses' station and talking about personal family drama during shift hours. It also claimed you made comments about wanting to harm a family member." I nearly dropped the phone. It never said anything remotely like that. I asked Patricia if I could see the written complaint. She said she'd have it ready for the meeting. When I saw it the next day, I recognized Celeste's writing style immediately. The complaint used phrases like concerning behavior and emotional instability that Celestis loved to use. The hospital required me to take administrative leave while they investigated. It was unpaid. I'd been living paycheck to paycheck even with my nursing salary, and suddenly I had no income. My savings account had $3,200, which had to cover rent, utilities, food, and the legal fees I was starting to rack up. Madison was working at a reduced rate for me, but I still owed her $1,500 already. I made the decision to sell some of Grandma's jewelry. She'd told me before she died, during one of her lucid moments, "Harper, if you ever need money, sell the jewelry. It's just things. Your security matters more." I took 3 pieces to a reputable jeweler downtown, an emerald ring, a pearl necklace, and a diamond bracelet that had belonged to my great-grandmother. The jeweler offered me $8,000. It felt like betraying Grandma's memory. But I knew she'd understand. I accepted the offer. Dad posted on Facebook that same day. "Heartbroken to learn my daughter is selling her grandmother's precious heirlooms before her body is even cold. Dorothy treasured those pieces, and it's devastating to see them treated with such disrespect." The post got 83 likes and 47 comments, most from people I didn't know. Celeste shared it with a crying emoji. Brooke commented, This is so sad. Grandma would be horrified. I wanted to scream. I wanted to comment and tell everyone the truth, but Madison had explicitly told me not to engage on social media. Every time you react, you give them ammunition. Let them keep talking. Well, use it all in court. So I stayed silent and watched my father's lies spread across the internet while I sold my grandmother's jewelry to pay for the lawyer I needed to prove heads stolen from her. The third major betrayal came from Tyler. Dad convinced him to sign an affidavit. Sienna sent me a photo of it before Tyler even told me himself. The document claimed that I had manipulated Grandma into changing her will, that I'd visited her daily to poison her mind against Dad, and that I'd prevented Tyler from visiting by telling hospital staff to ban him. Every single claim was a lie. I'd never prevented anyone from visiting Grandma. Tyler had chosen not to come. I had hospital visitor logs that proved no bans were ever requested or implemented. But Tyler's signature was at the bottom of the affidavit, notarized and official. When I called him, he didn't answer. He texted me instead. Dad explained everything. You've been lying to all of us. I can't believe I almost fell for it. I sent him the visitor logs. He read them and didn't respond. The silence was worse than anything he could have said. Madison recommended hiring a private investigator. We need someone who can dig into Richard's business dealings and financial history. Someone who knows how to find evidence that won't be voluntarily provided. She gave me the name of a man named Devon, who specialized in financial crimes and asset tracing. His retainer was $3,000. I used the money from Grandma's jewelry. Devon was in his 50s, former FBI, and he got to work immediately. Within 1 week, Head found things I never would have discovered on my own. Celeste's wellness business, the one that had received $30,000 from Grandma's account, had never filed taxes despite being registered as an LLC. It had no website, no location, no evidence of any actual business operations. It was a shell company. Devon found the application documents. Celeste had listed Dorothy as an initial investor without Dorothy's knowledge or consent. Devon also tracked down Brooke's apartment lease. Dad had signed as her guarantor, which meant he was legally responsible for her rent if she didn't pay. The lease showed monthly rent of $2,400, not the $800. Dad had told Dorothy he was paying to help Brooke with a modest studio. Devon got copies of the lease agreement through public records requests and professional connections I didn't understand but deeply appreciated. He also traced Tyler's Europe expenses through credit card statements that Dad had used. Because Dad had added Tyler as an authorized user on one of his business credit cards, the statements were accessible through certain legal channels. The total for 8 months of Tyler's travel was $42,000. Hotels, restaurants, flights, all paid for by Dad, all funded by money that had come from Dorothy's accounts. The most damning piece of evidence came from an email Devon obtained through legal discovery processes. Dad had sent an email to his business partner, a man named Greg Simmons, 14 months earlier. The email read, "My mother-in-law's accounts are accessible now that I have medical power of attorney. Shell never noticed small transfers. Her diagnosis makes the timing perfect. We can funnel it through the business account and create invoices for elder care services. Nobody questions medical expenses for a dying woman." Greg's response was just as bad. "Make sure the documentation looks legitimate. Invoices from licensed care providers are the best route. I know a guy who'll create them for a fee. This was premeditation. This was conspiracy. This was everything I needed to prove intent." Devon discovered something else that made my stomach turn. Celeste had registered a nonprofit called Elder Wellness Foundation 2 years earlier. The foundation had received a $15,000 donation from Dorothy's account, listed as a charitable contribution. But the foundation had no activity. No programs, no beneficiaries, no website, no public records of doing anything. The donated money had been transferred out of the foundation's account within 48 hours and deposited into Celeste's personal checking account. This wasn't just theft. This was tax fraud and charity fraud. Devon explained that filing false charitable donations was a federal crime. He provided me with a detailed report, professionally formatted with exhibits and documentation. Madison immediately shared it with the APS investigator and filed a supplemental report with the district attorney's office. Then, things got personal in a new way. It applied to refinance Grandma's house, so I could afford to keep it while renting it out for income. The mortgage broker called me with bad news. Miss Sullivan, your application has been denied due to recent credit inquiries and a low credit score. I was confused. My credit score had been 720 last time I checked. I requested my credit report immediately. What I saw made me furious. There were 5 hard inquiries on my credit from the past 2 months. Applications for credit cards ID never applied for. All the applications had been denied because the information didn't match, but the inquiries themselves had dropped my score by 60 points. Someone had used my name, social security number, and date of birth to try to open credit accounts. I filed a police report for identity theft that same day. The detective who took my report was sympathetic. "Mom, I have to tell you, in most identity theft cases, the perpetrator is someone the victim knows, usually a family member." I told her I knew exactly who it was. While I was dealing with the credit fraud, I got a frantic call from Tyler. "Harper, Dad's in the hospital. He had a heart attack. Hess asking for you. Please come." Something felt wrong. Tyler's voice sounded scripted, but I couldn't take the chance. If Dad was actually dying and I didn't go, I'd never forgive myself. I drove to the hospital head named, which was across town from where I worked. I rushed into the emergency department and asked for Richard Sullivan. The nurse looked confused. She checked her computer, checked with her colleagues, and came back. "Mom, we don't have any patient by that name. Are you sure he's here?" I called Tyler immediately. His phone went to voicemail. Then I realized what had happened. They'd wanted me out of my apartment. I drove home as fast as I legally could, my heart pounding. When I got to Grandma's house, where I'd been staying to sort through her belongings, I found the locks had been changed. There was a locksmith van in the driveway. A man was installing new deadbolts. Standing on the porch, supervising, was my father. He saw me pull up and didn't even flinch. "I'm changing the locks on my mother-in-law's house for security during the estate settlement period. There have been concerns about unauthorized access." I pulled out my phone and called the police. While I waited for them to arrive, I called Madison. She was already preparing an emergency motion. Within 3 hours, we were in front of a judge. Madison presented my executor documentation and the evidence of the ongoing financial exploitation investigation. The judge granted a temporary restraining order requiring Dad to return all keys and stay at least 100 yards away from the property. Dad's face when the bailiff handed him the order was worth every terrible moment of the past month. Ruth Chen from Adult Protective Services called me for a formal interview. We met at a coffee shop near the hospital where I used to work. Ruth was in her 40s, professional but warm. Shed brought a thick file folder. "Harper, I've been doing this work for 30 years. I've seen cases involving $10,000 or $20,000. $85,000 is significant, but what really stands out here is the sophistication. Your father created an entire paper trail of fake invoices, fake companies, and false documentation. This wasn't opportunistic. This was planned." She showed me copies of the invoices Dad had submitted to Dorothy's bank to justify the transfers. Companies with names like Cascade Home Health Services and Portland Elder Care Associates. Ruth had investigated each one. None of them existed. The business licenses were fake. The addresses were vacant lots or businesses that had closed years ago. Ruth had requested Dad's cooperation in providing bank records and documentation to prove the money had gone to legitimate expenses for Dorothy's care. Had refused. His attorney, Gerald, had sent a letter stating that Richard declined to participate in a fishing expedition based on the false accusations of an unreliable complainant. Ruth explained that this refusal actually worked in my favor. When someone has nothing to hide, they provide documentation to clear their name. When someone refuses to cooperate with a financial exploitation investigation, it raises red flags. "We're filing for subpoena power. A judge will order him to provide the records." The timeline was 14 days from the filing date for Dad to comply with the subpoena. If he refused, he could be held in contempt of court. The same day Ruth filed for the subpoena, Dad's attorney sent a letter to my employer. It was addressed to the hospital's legal department and HR. The letter stated that Miss Harper Sullivan is currently the subject of an ongoing investigation by Adult Protective Services for elder abuse and financial exploitation of her deceased grandmother. Technically, this was true. APS was investigating the situation, and I was involved as the complainant, but the way Gerald worded it made it sound like I was the perpetrator. The hospital's HR director, Patricia, called me in for another meeting. "Harper, we've received correspondence from an attorney that raises serious concerns. We need to extend your administrative leave until this matter is resolved." I felt my career slipping away. Madison immediately sent a cease and desist letter to Gerald, threatening a defamation lawsuit if he continued to make false implications about my involvement in the investigation. 3 weeks without income turned into 4, then 5. My savings were gone. I'd sold the jewelry, but that money was going to legal fees and basic living expenses. Rent was due. I had $400 in my checking account. Jenna offered to loan me money. I refused. I couldn't drag her into this financial nightmare. I started applying for part-time work, anything that didn't require a nursing license. I got a job waiting tables at a diner 3 nights a week. It paid $9 an hour plus tips. I'd worked my way through nursing school doing exactly this, and now I was back to it. The irony wasn't lost on me. Dad posted on Facebook again, praying for my daughter during her struggles. Sometimes the people we love most make choices we can't understand. Celeste commented with prayer hands emojis. Brooke shared it with the caption, "Family is everything." Tyler sent me a formal statement, signed and notarized, for Dad's attorney to use in the estate dispute. The statement claimed I had manipulated Grandma into changing her will by visiting her daily and poisoning her mind against Dad. It claimed I had prevented Tyler from visiting by telling hospital staff to ban him from Dorothy's room. It even included a line about how I'd always been jealous of Tyler's relationship with Dad and that this was my revenge. Every word was a lie. I subpoenaed hospital records through Madison. The records showed that Tyler had visited Dorothy exactly once in the 6 months of her illness. Had stayed for 15 minutes. There was no record of any visitor ban ever being requested or implemented for any family member. I sent copies of the hospital records to Tyler with a text message. "These are facts. You signed lies." He didn't respond. Days later, Sienna texted me. "He knows he messed up. He won't admit it, but I see it." Devon, the private investigator, earned every cent of his fee. He obtained, through channels he wouldn't fully explain but assured me were legal, an email exchange between Dad and his business partner Greg. The email was dated 14 months prior, right around the time Dorothy's diagnosis became public knowledge in the family. Dad had written, "My mother-in-law's accounts are accessible now. Shell never noticed small transfers. Her diagnosis is perfect timing." Greg's reply confirmed they'd planned to create fake invoices for elder care services. This wasn't a mistake or a misunderstanding. This was premeditated theft with full intent to exploit a dying woman. Devon provided the email chain in a sealed report directly to Ruth and to Madison. Madison immediately sent copies to the district attorney's office with a cover letter requesting criminal prosecution. Devon also uncovered Celeste's fake charity. The Elder Wellness Foundation had received a $15,000 donation from Dorothy's account, supposedly for a nonprofit serving elderly community members. But the foundation had never filed required tax documents. It had no evidence of providing services to anyone. The money had been transferred to Celeste's personal account within 2 days of the donation. Devon found the foundation's bank records through a legal subpoena Madison had filed. When confronted with this information through official channels, Celeste's attorney claimed she'd made administrative errors in managing the nonprofit and planned to rectify the situation. Too late. Charity fraud is a federal offense. Devon filed a report with the IRS and the state attorney general's office. I discovered something that chilled me to the bone. 2 months before Dad disowned me, someone had requested my medical records from my primary care physician's office. The request came with what appeared to be my signature on an authorization form. But it wasn't my signature. I requested copies of the authorization from my doctor's office. When I showed it to Jenna, she immediately said, "Harper, that's not your handwriting." I took it to a handwriting expert that Devon recommended. The expert compared it to my actual signature on file with the DMV and my nursing license. His professional opinion was that the signature was a forgery, likely created by someone who had access to samples of my real signature but hadn't practiced enough to make it perfect. Dad had planned the unstable daughter narrative long before I ever confronted him. Head needed my medical records to create a false psychiatric evaluation to show people like Melissa's mom. This wasn't reactive. This was calculated. Dad's attorney filed a lawsuit. The paperwork was delivered to my apartment by a process server on a Monday morning. The suit named me as defendant and claimed defamation, intentional infliction of emotional distress, and tortious interference with family relationships. It demanded $200,000 in damages, my removal as executor of Dorothy's estate, and return of all inherited assets to the family for proper distribution. The lawsuit included statements from Tyler and declarations from Celeste claiming I'd spread lies about Dad to extended family members. Brooke's statement claimed my accusations had caused her emotional trauma. The local newspaper picked up the story. The headline read, "Local Family Feud Over Estate Turns Ugly." The article quoted Dad's attorney describing Richard as a successful businessman heartbroken over his daughter's mental health crisis. I wasn't contacted for comment before publication. Madison told me it was time to go public. They're controlling the narrative. We need to present the facts before this gets worse. I'd been hesitant to air family business publicly, but I was tired of being painted as the villain. I sat down at my laptop and wrote a Facebook post. It took me 2 hours to get it right. I laid out the timeline, Dorothy's diagnosis, my role as her caretaker, her concerns about missing money, the bank statements showing $85,000 in unauthorized withdrawals, Dad's refusal to explain, the fake invoices Devon had discovered, the APS investigation, the subpoena, and the lawsuit. I didn't name Dad directly in the post. I used phrases like a family member with power of attorney and the person responsible. Madison had advised me to keep it factual and avoid emotional language. I included photos of some of the bank statements with account numbers redacted. I ended the post with, "Elder financial abuse happens every day. If someone in your life is vulnerable, watch for warning signs. And if you see something, speak up." The post went viral within hours. It was shared 2,300 times in the first day. Comments poured in. Hundreds of people shared their own stories of family members who'd been exploited. Former patients of mine from the hospital commented, flooding my post with support. "Harper took care of my mother like she was family. She would never harm an elderly person. This nurse has more integrity than anyone I've ever met. I trust Harper completely. Something's wrong with this story we're hearing." The tide was beginning to turn. People started commenting on Dad's Facebook posts, asking questions he couldn't answer. "If you're innocent, why won't you provide bank records? Why are you suing your daughter instead of proving your case?" Dad made his Facebook profile private. Celeste deleted her Instagram account. Brooke locked down her TikTok. A local TV news station reached out. They wanted to interview me for a segment on elder financial abuse. Madison and I discussed it carefully. She said it was my choice, but that it could help put pressure on the system to take the case seriously. I agreed. The interview happened at the station on a Thursday afternoon. The reporter was a woman in her 30s named Keisha who said her own grandmother had been exploited by a caretaker years ago. She asked fair questions, let me speak without interruption, and asked to see the documents. I showed her copies with personal information redacted. The segment aired 2 days later. 5 minutes of me calmly explaining what had happened, showing the bank statements, and describing how Dorothy had asked me to investigate. The reporter ended the segment by noting that Harper Sullivan had declined multiple requests for an interview and that his attorney had issued a statement calling it a private family matter. The community response was overwhelming. Dorothy's church congregation organized a letter-writing campaign. 20 members sent formal letters to the district attorney's office asking for criminal prosecution. Pastor Miller, who'd known Dorothy for decades, agreed to give a deposition. He told Madison that Dorothy had confided in him 2 months before she died. She told me she was afraid of Richard. She said he'd been pressuring her to sign documents she didn't understand. 3 of Dad's business partners publicly distanced themselves from him. One of them, a man named Tom who co-owned a commercial property with Dad, issued a statement saying he'd dissolved their partnership due to ethical concerns. Celeste's yoga studio lost half its membership within a week. Students left reviews online saying they couldn't support someone involved in elder exploitation. Then Brooks College got involved. Someone, I never found out who, sent an anonymous tip to the university's financial aid office. The tip alleged that Brooke had received tuition payments from exploited elder funds. Universities take this seriously because it can affect their federal funding eligibility. The financial aid office launched an investigation. They discovered that Dad had listed Dorothy as a voluntary contributor on Brooke's financial aid forms, claiming Dorothy had chosen to help with tuition. But Dorothy had never consented to this. Her signature on the form was forged, similar to the forged signature on my medical records request. The university suspended Brooke pending the outcome of the investigation. Brooke posted a long, angry rant on her newly unlocked Instagram. "My stepfather's daughter has destroyed my education. I hope she's happy. The comments section didn't go the way she expected. Your stepfather destroyed it by stealing money. Accept some responsibility. You knew where that money came from." Tyler called me drunk. It was 2 a.m, and I almost didn't answer. His voice was slurred and broken. "Harper, did Dad really steal from Grandma?" I'd been waiting for this moment. I sent him the full evidence package. Bank statements, fake invoices, Devon's investigative report, the email between Dad and Greg, everything. I told him to look at it when he was sober and call me back. He went silent for 3 days. Then I got a text. I saw the invoices. I reverse searched those companies. They don't exist. I need to think. 2 days after that, Tyler sent another text. "I'm going to tell the truth. I'm sorry it took me this long. Sienna called me that night. He's ready to give a statement to the investigator. He's scared of your dad, but he knows this is wrong." The district attorney's office called Madison. They'd reviewed the evidence from Adult Protective Services, Devon's investigative report, the fake invoices, the email correspondence, and Tyler's new statement. They were filing criminal charges. Richard Sullivan was charged with financial exploitation of an elderly person, which is a Class B felony in Oregon, theft in the first degree, multiple counts of forgery, and identity theft for the forged signatures on various documents. The charges were filed on a Wednesday. Dad was arrested at his office on Thursday morning. The bail was set at $50,000. He posted it within 3 hours using a commercial bail bondsman, which meant he'd put up collateral, probably his house. The district attorney offered Dad a plea deal. Plead guilty to reduce charges, agree to full restitution of $127,000, because it turned out he'd taken even more than I initially found, and accept 3 years of probation with community service. No jail time if he complied with all terms. Madison told me about the offer when the DA's office informed her. I asked her what would happen if he rejected it. She said, "Then we go to trial, and if he's convicted on the full charges, he's looking at significant prison time, 5 to 10 years. Dad rejected the plea deal. His new attorney, a criminal defense lawyer named Clayton Marks, issued a statement. "Mr. Sullivan is innocent of these charges. This is a vindictive prosecution driven by a disturbed daughter. We will vigorously defend his rights and look forward to proving his innocence in court." 2 days after Dad rejected the plea deal, Celeste filed for divorce. The papers were served to him at his house. She claimed Shed had no knowledge of his financial crimes and was shocked to discover his actions. Her divorce filing included a request for spousal support and division of marital assets. Devon found evidence that disproved her claims of ignorance. Emails between Celeste and Dad specifically mentioned MIL's money and discussed how they'd use it for her business. When confronted with this evidence through the DA's office, Celeste's attorney negotiated immunity in exchange for her testimony against Dad. Celeste agreed. She would testify that Dad had told her the money was from Dorothy's accounts, and that Shed expressed concerns but had assured her it was legal. The trial preparation took months. I was subpoenaed as the primary witness. I had to take unpaid leave from my nursing job again, although this time the hospital was supportive because the HR investigation had concluded the complaint against me was baseless. My supervisor apologized directly. "Harper, we should have trusted you from the start. I'm sorry you went through this." I appreciated the apology, but it didn't give me back the income I'd lost or the stress it endured. I returned to work part-time, picking up shifts when I could around court dates and legal meetings. The hospital staff treated me like a hero. Patients who'd heard about the case asked me how I was doing. It was overwhelming but also healing. Brooke was expelled from her university. The financial aid fraud investigation concluded that Shed knowingly accepted tuition payments from illegally obtained funds. Even though she hadn't personally forged documents, Shed failed to question where the money came from when she knew her stepfather was unemployed and his business was struggling. The university had a zero-tolerance policy. Brooke's expulsion was final. She moved back in with Celeste, who was living in a small apartment after leaving Dad. I heard through Marcus that Brooke got a job working retail at a mall. I didn't feel satisfaction hearing it. I just felt sad that so many lives had been damaged by Dad's greed. The trial lasted 3 days. The courtroom was small, and every seat was filled. Aunt Linda, Uncle George, Marcus, Jenna, Madison, and about 20 members of Dorothy's church congregation came to support me. On Dad's side of the courtroom sat 2 of his cousins and Clayton, his attorney. Tyler sat in the back row, alone, not clearly on either side. When it was my turn to testify, I walked to the witness stand, feeling surprisingly calm. The prosecutor, a woman named Jennifer Park, asked me to explain my relationship with Dorothy, my role as her caretaker, and how I discovered the financial exploitation. I spoke for 4 hours over 2 sessions. I presented documents, explained the timeline, and answered every question clearly. Clayton, Dad's attorney, tried to attack my credibility during cross-examination. "Miss Sullivan, isn't it true you wanted your grandmother's money for yourself?" I looked directly at him. "No. I wanted my grandmother to live her final months without being stolen from by the person she trusted most." The jury watched me carefully. Celeste testified the next day. She admitted Shed known about the money transfers but claimed Dad had told her Dorothy wanted to help with family expenses. The prosecutor showed her the emails where Shed discussed using MIL's money while we can. Celeste broke down on the stand, crying. "I thought it was legal. Richard said it was fine." Tyler testified after Celeste. He was pale and shaking. He described how Dad had coached him to sign the false affidavit, how Dad had promised him part of the inheritance if he supported the family, and how Head finally realized the truth when he saw the fake invoices. "I'm sorry, Harper," he said directly to me from the witness stand. "I should have believed you from the start." Dad stared straight ahead, emotionless, the entire time Tyler spoke. The jury deliberated for 6 hours. When they came back, the verdict was guilty on all counts. Financial exploitation of an elderly person, theft in the first degree, forgery, identity theft. Dad showed no emotion when the verdicts were read. He stared at me across the courtroom with a look I couldn't interpret. Hate? Disbelief? Regret? I'd never know. Sentencing was scheduled for 3 weeks later. Madison warned me that sentencing hearings could be emotional. "You'll have a chance to give a victim impact statement. Think about what you want to say." I spent the next 3 weeks writing and rewriting my statement. Sentencing day arrived on a cold morning in November. The courtroom was full again. I sat in the front row with Jenna and Madison. When the judge asked if I wanted to make a statement, I stood up. My hands were shaking, but my voice was steady. "Your Honor, my grandmother trusted my father. She welcomed him into our family when he married my mother. After my mother died, she continued to treat him like a son. When she got sick, she relied on him to help manage her affairs because she thought he cared about her. Instead, he saw her as an opportunity. He stole from her while she was dying. He used her money to fund his stepfamily's lifestyle, while I worked double shifts to pay for her medications. This case isn't about money. It's about dignity. It's about the fact that my grandmother died not knowing if she'd have enough for her own care because the person she trusted had betrayed her. I hope the court will send a message that this kind of exploitation has real consequences. The judge sentenced Dad to 5 years in state prison. He also ordered full restitution of $127,000 plus $50,000 in penalties and fees. Dad's assets would be liquidated to pay the restitution immediately. If he couldn't pay within 60 days, additional time would be added to his sentence. The judge spoke directly to Dad. Mr. Sullivan, you committed a calculated, premeditated theft against a vulnerable elderly woman who trusted you. The betrayal of that trust is one of the most egregious factors in this case. I hope you use your time in prison to reflect on the harm you've caused. Dad was taken into custody immediately. As the bailiff led him out of the courtroom, he looked back at me one last time. I didn't look away. I wanted him to see that I'd survived what Head tried to do to me. The aftermath came quickly. Dad's house went into foreclosure because he couldn't make mortgage payments from prison. Celeste had already moved out and taken what she could in the divorce settlement, which wasn't much because most of their assets were tied up in restitution payments. The house sold at auction for $280,000. After the mortgage was paid off, the remaining equity went toward restitution. Dad's business declared bankruptcy. The commercial property he co-owned was sold. Between the house, the business assets, and liquidating his retirement accounts, the full restitution was paid within 4 months. I received a check from the court for $127,000 on behalf of Dorothy's estate. I deposited it into an account ID opened specifically for the scholarship fund ID created in Grandma's name. 6 months after the trial ended, life started to feel normal again. I was back working full-time as a charge nurse at the hospital. My supervisor had promoted me partly because of my performance and partly, I think, because she felt guilty about the suspension. Jenna and I still had our Sunday coffee tradition, and she never let me forget how proud she was of me. "You took on your whole family and won," she said one morning. "That's not something most people could do." I didn't feel like I'd won anything. I felt like I'd survived. Cousin Marcus had become one of my closest friends. We had family dinners every Sunday with Aunt Linda and Uncle George. Tyler started coming to some of them. The first time he showed up was awkward. He stood in the doorway of Aunt Linda's house, looking terrified. I walked over and hugged him. "I'm glad you're here," I told him. He cried. Tyler was working on rebuilding his life. Had gotten a job as a social media manager for a non-profit that helped homeless youth. The pay wasn't great, but he said the work mattered. He paid me back $200 from each paycheck. "It'll take me years to pay you back for everything, but I owe you more than money," he said. I told him the money didn't matter as much as him getting healthy and making better choices. He was in therapy twice a week, working through the guilt and the realization that Head been manipulated. Had broken up with Sienna briefly because he felt like he didn't deserve her, but Shed refused to give up on him. They were back together and seemed solid. Sienna came to family dinners sometimes, and I liked her more every time we talked. Shed seen through Dad's lies before Tyler did, and that kind of clarity was rare. The Dorothy Sullivan Memorial Nursing Scholarship was officially established in January. I'd used the restitution money to create an endowed fund through the local community college. Every year, the scholarship would provide $5,000 to a single parent putting themselves through nursing school. The first recipient was a woman named Maria, who was 32, had 3 kids, and worked night shifts at a grocery store while taking classes during the day. At the award ceremony, I spoke about Grandma's belief in second chances and hard work. Maria cried when I handed her the check. "This changes everything for my family," she said. In the first year, community donations added another $25,000 to the fund. People who'd followed the case wanted to contribute. It felt like something good had come from something terrible. I started seeing a therapist to process everything that had happened. Her name was Dr. Reeves, and she specialized in family trauma. For months, I'd been so focused on the legal battle that I hadn't dealt with the emotional impact. Sitting in her office, I finally let myself feel the grief. Grief for the father I'd thought I had. Grief for the family that could have been. Grief for my grandmother who'd died not knowing justice would be served. Dr. Reeves helped me understand that I could hold multiple truths at once. I could acknowledge that Dad had done terrible things while also mourning the relationship we'd never had. I could be angry and hurt while also moving forward. Therapy gave me tools to set boundaries and recognize that family isn't just blood. Family is the people who show up, who believe you, who stand beside you when everything falls apart. I started dating someone I met through Marcus. His name was Colin, and he was a teacher at a local high school. He knew my whole story before our first date because Marcus had told him everything. "I want you to know what you're getting into," Colin had said when he asked me out. "I know your family situation is complicated, and am okay with that." On our third date, I told him I had trust issues. He laughed gently. "Harper, after what you've been through, I'd be worried if you didn't." We took things slow. He met Jenna and got her approval, which mattered more to me than I expected. He came to family dinners and fit in like he'd always been there. I wasn't ready to say I was in love, but I was ready to try. Dad wrote me letters from prison. I got the first one 3 months into his sentence. I didn't open it. Madison had warned me he might try to contact me. "You don't owe him your time or energy," she said. I threw the letter away. He sent 3 more over the next few months. I threw them all away without reading them. Tyler told me Dad had started a blog from prison, posting through a friend on the outside, maintaining his innocence, and claiming he was a victim of a corrupt system. He had a small following of people who believed him. I'd learned early on not to read it. Dad's version of reality didn't affect my life anymore. His narrative didn't define me. Tyler had blocked Dad's emails and refused to visit him in prison. "I can't heal while he's still lying," Tyler explained. I understood completely. I volunteered with an elder justice advocacy group that worked to prevent financial exploitation. Once a month, I spoke at community centers and senior living facilities about warning signs. I explained what power of attorney really meant, how to protect financial information, and why it was important to have multiple trusted people reviewing accounts. After every presentation, at least one person would come up to me and say they'd noticed something similar happening in their own family. I helped 3 families recognize exploitation patterns and connect with resources. One woman, whose son had been taking money from her checking account, hugged me and said, "You saved me." That felt better than any verdict. Grandma's house became a source of peace for me. I'd decided to rent it out to a young couple I met through the hospital. The wife was a nurse in her first year, and her husband was a teacher. They reminded me of who I wanted to be at that age: hopeful, hard-working, building a life together. I charged them below market rent because I remembered what it was like to struggle financially in your 20s. I kept Grandma's bedroom exactly as she'd left it. Her knitting chair by the window, her shelves full of mystery novels, framed photos of our family from better times. Once a month, I'd go over and sit in that room. Sometimes I'd talk to her like she was still there. "Grandma, I did it. I fought, and I didn't let him win." I'd imagine her squeezing my hand the way she had in the hospital. I'd imagine her saying she was proud. One Sunday morning, I was sitting on my apartment balcony with coffee and my journal. It was something Dr. Reeves had suggested, writing down my thoughts as a way to process. I wrote about what I'd learned. I learned that doing the right thing cost something. It cost me a father I never really had, a brother I'm slowly getting back, and months of peace. But I gained something more valuable. I learned I'm strong enough to stand alone. I learned that truth is worth fighting for, even when everyone calls you crazy. I learned that blood doesn't obligate you to accept abuse. I learned that the family you choose, the Jennas and Madisons and Marcuses of the world, can be stronger than the family you're born into. I wrote one more line. Grandma, I hope you're proud. I didn't let him win. Healing didn't mean forgetting. It meant refusing to let the betrayal define my future. It meant understanding that not every family member deserved access to my life. It meant knowing that financial exploitation of elders was more common than people wanted to believe, and that speaking up, even when it was hard, could save someone else from going through what Dorothy went through. It meant accepting that standing up for what's right sometimes required standing completely alone, and it meant recognizing that family, real family, wasn't about DNA. It was about who showed up when everything fell apart. Jenna had shown up. Madison had fought beside me. Marcus had believed me. Tyler had eventually come around. That was my real family. Tyler texted me one Sunday afternoon. Family dinner at Aunt Linda's tonight. You coming? I smiled at my phone. Real family dinner. Not the performative kind Dad used to host where everyone pretended everything was perfect. The kind where people were honest and messy and showed up anyway. I texted back. Wouldn't miss it. I thought about Dad in prison, writing his blog posts and maintaining his innocence to whoever would listen. I felt nothing but quiet relief. He couldn't hurt me anymore. He couldn't hurt anyone anymore. Grandma's voice echoed in my memory. Don't let him win. I whispered out loud. I didn't, Grandma. I didn't. I closed my journal and looked at the framed photo of Dorothy on my bookshelf. She was smiling in the picture, standing in her garden with dirt on her hands and joy on her face. That's how I wanted to remember her. Not as a victim, but as a woman who'd lived fully and loved deeply. A woman who'd trusted the wrong person, but whose legacy lived on in the scholarship that would help other people build better lives. Life continued. Healing continued. The work of fighting for people who couldn't fight for themselves continued, and I was ready for all of it. So here's my question for you. Have you ever had to stand up to family when no one believed you? Have you watched someone you love be taken advantage of and felt powerless to stop it? Drop a comment and share your story. You're not alone, and your experience matters. If this story resonated with you, please hit that like button. It helps other people find this video, and maybe someone who needs to hear this will see it. Subscribe to this channel if you want more real stories about fighting back against injustice and finding strength you didn't know you had. And share this video with someone who needs to know that standing up for what's right is worth it, even when it costs everything. Thank you for listening to my story. Thank you for being here. I hope you find the courage to protect the people you love and the strength to stand alone when you have to. Take care of yourselves. And remember that truth always finds its way to the light, even when the darkness feels overwhelming. Until next time.